All right, what is going on, everyone? Soss here with yet another video, and today we are talking about what happened, reaction, results, all that good stuff from the Money in the Bank PLE that the WWE just put on. Now, man, it's come up with some mixed reviews. So why has it come up with mixed reviews? It was, man, it was an interesting PLE to say the least. I've had a little bit of time to stew over what happened and everything, and I will say that it was not as bad as I initially thought it was going to be, but it still was not the best PLE that we've seen. This was actually, I will say this was actually probably so far the worst PLE that we've had this year. Yeah, I can confidently say that, and we'll go over why. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this, shall we? Alright, so first off, I wanted to give a shout out. Check out the background. Yeah, that's right. That's not an actual WWE title. It is actually a cooler. Yeah, I got it recently. And I've got a couple plushes that are up there. I'm going to be transforming the office into more closely related to wrestling stuff, since that's what we're doing a lot of now. But don't worry, reactions aren't going away. So yeah. So starting off the night was the men's Money in the Bank match, and it was actually it was a banger. It was a really good match. There was a lot of really good spots, and it looked like you really had no idea who was going to end up winning. But Drew McIntyre ended up coming out on top, which I didn't necessarily agree with. I thought that either LA Knight or Jey Uso would have been a better fit, but as we all know, if you are looking at and following any of what's been going on in the wrestling world, Logan Paul and LA Knight have been feuding. So more than likely at SummerSlam, Logan Paul is going to be having a match with LA Knight, and it's going to be more than likely for the US title. So he already has a potential title chance anyway. And then, of course, with the Bloodline 2.0 being such prominence right now, then more than likely Jey Uso is going to be thrown back into the mix with the old bloodline, so that we have kind of a civil war between the old bloodline and the new bloodline. So with that being said, it kind of makes sense to give Drew the Money in the Bank match, but I really didn't like it because of the fact that everybody kind of knew that if he did win Money in the Bank, then he was going to more than likely cash in, because he had already said on SmackDown previously that he was going to cash in. So after a big time match with a lot of really good spots, Drew McIntyre ends up winning. He wins the briefcase, and it's kind of a foregone conclusion that more than likely he was going to go ahead and cash in. And I didn't really like that idea. I was hoping that they were going to push off the cash in for a little while, but later on he did end up cashing in, but we'll talk about that in a few. I believe that the next match on the card was actually the Intercontinental Championship match. I could be wrong. I could be misremembering, so if I am, please forgive me. But Sami Zayn went up against Braun Breaker, and I thought that this was an interesting match. It wasn't bad. It was pretty good, but I've seen a lot of memes and a lot of joking lately calling Sami Zayn Sammy Hogan, because like he'll be getting the crap beat out of him for the majority of the match, and then all of a sudden at the end he'll start hulking up, so to speak, and he ends up winning the match. And guess what ended up happening again? For the most part, he was getting the crap beaten out of him and everything, and then ends up hulking up, if you will, and he ends up hitting a haluva kick and ends up winning. I didn't mind it. I think that the only issue I really had with this match was just the fact that I was really hoping, honestly. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Sami Zayn. I really like his Intercontinental title run so far. I thought that they've been doing a really good job with it, but I thought that this would have been a great time to go ahead and put the belt on Braun Breaker, because the dude's a superstar. He's an ascending superstar. He's going to continue to ascend. He's going to be a big time name, and I think that this would have been a great opportunity to go ahead and put the strap on him. And I don't like the fact that there wasn't very many, surprises, I guess you could say. Like, this whole PLE, you go into it thinking that it could go either way. And then what ends up happening is that it doesn't go either way. You can pretty much tell exactly what was going to happen. And I think the biggest issue is that this was billed as a much, much bigger deal than it actually was. But anyway, moving on, the next match, I believe, was the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. And I'll tell you what, I have been getting increasingly impressed with the matches that the women's division has been putting on. Like, my goodness, a lot of their matches in PLEs, they're kind of hit and miss, but this one was an absolute banger. And Tiffany Stratton ended up winning the Money in the Bank briefcase, which congrats to her. She's awesome. She is amazing. She's an amazing talent. And some of these spots were just incredible. They were absolutely incredible. And it bodes well for the WWE moving forward, especially for the women. The women are getting set up for a lot of success, which is something different than in previous years, because a lot of times they were objectified in a way, and it wasn't very good. But it looks like the WWE is becoming more progressive with them, which, good on you, WWE. I like it. So the match for the World Heavyweight Championship, there was a stipulation. So Damian Priest, if he wins, then Seth doesn't get another title opportunity as long as he has the title, which a lot of people kind of assume and think that Damian Priest is going to just be a transitionary champion anyway. And then if Seth ends up winning, then Damian Priest has to leave the Judgment Day, which everybody can kind of already see. The seeds are being planted for him to leave anyway. It's an inevitable thing. It's going to happen at some point. We just don't know when. Now, the biggest issue that we kind of had with this whole situation is that there's always that looming idea that Drew McIntyre was going to cash in, and I didn't agree with this decision. So there was a few botches in the match, which a lot of people are talking about, but not super overly concerned with it. I thought it was a little Bush League in a way. There was a time that the whole internet's talking about where Seth Rollins actually pinned Damian Priest, and I guess the timing of the next spot just wasn't there. And so what ended up happening is Damian Priest was actually pinned for a 3 count, and then it was botched. It looked very Bush League. It wasn't great. And then all of a sudden you hear Drew's music come on, and he comes rushing down to the ring, cashes in the Money in the Bank. He's getting ready. He turns it into a triple threat match for the World Heavyweight title. And then, of course, just like everybody thought was going to happen, CM Punk comes out, interferes. Don't really have an issue with it, but it's just very predictable. Up until this point, WWE has done a very good job of not being super predictable, but this was insanely predictable, which was weird because that's not something you're used to seeing with WWE in the Paul Levesque era. But what ends up happening is Mr. DM Hunk, Mr. Drew McIntyre, he takes the pin, and Damian Priest retains. And Damian Priest very obviously looks very, very frustrated with the fact that he just lost, or not, he didn't just lose, that he just won again with interference, because in every single title defense that he's had, he has not won without some sort of interference. And I think that it's showing that it bothers him storyline wise, because if it's not the Judgment Day, it's something else, and he's just trying to solidify himself as a legitimate champion, which I don't blame him. I think that's great. I think it adds a little bit of depth and layer to the storyline. But immediately following the match, you can tell that Seth Rollins, who clearly already has real life heat with CM Punk, he got very, very frustrated. So it's kind of lining up a 3-way feud in a way between Drew, Seth, and CM Punk, which I think it's great. It's going to be a little interesting moving forward. but we'll talk about that here in a second. And then finally, we have the 6-man tag team match of Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, Kevin Owens versus the Bloodline, consisting of Tama Tonga, Solo Sikoa, and Jacob Fatu. So this is the in-ring debut of Jacob Fatu. I've got a couple more videos coming out soon talking about the other big things that happened. So like John Cena announcing his retirement, and then Solo Sikoa announcing on SmackDown all the big stuff coming up with the Bloodline. I'll be doing separate videos on those. I'm going to touch on the John Cena stuff just a little bit in this video, but I've got different videos coming up for that stuff, so you'll want to make sure that you stay tuned for those. But I didn't have any issues with the 6-man tag match. I thought it was very well done. I really like that they featured Jacob Fatu a lot. Like, he looked very strong, and I talked about it in a video previously that Jacob Fatu is being set up and looks like a legitimate superstar enforcer. He looks way better than, in my opinion, you guys can let me know if you guys agree with me, but in my opinion, he looks a lot more of the enforcer type and a lot more believable as an enforcer than Solo Sikoa ever did under the original Bloodline. With that being said, I want to know what you guys think. I really enjoyed his in-ring debut. The WWE is very clearly going to be pushing him to the absolute moon here soon, because they make him look like an indomitable force, and it's exciting to watch because he is a force. He's a force to be reckoned with. He is incredible. He's an incredible in-ring performer. Like, he has so much charisma. He's got the look. He's got the ability. It's going to be very interesting to see how they do things moving forward. But after all the chaos, another botch by Tongaloa. He went for the low blow. He had to do it twice because he screwed up the first time. Like, my dude is literally struggling so far in his Bloodline debut, his WWE main roster debut. It's he doesn't look great, but I've heard from other people and I've heard on the internet that he wasn't overly impressive whenever he was in New Japan. But yeah, so what ends up happening is that Jacob goes in the ring. He starts taking out Cody. Cody ends up getting pinned by Solo Sikoa, which needed to happen. A clean pin needed to happen, and part of the reason why is because it needs to make Solo look a little bit more realistic as a threat and more credible as a threat. Because going into SummerSlam, he is going to be getting a shot at the Universal title, obviously, so they've got to make sure that he looks good, and this was the best way to do it. I didn't have any issues with it. Now, here are my issues with the PLE as a whole. Well, first off, let's talk a little bit about John Cena's retirement. I was never a huge John Cena fan. I just didn't really like his character a whole lot. Whenever I was big into wrestling, it kind of grew on me, but it's still he definitely did a lot, and he definitely is one of the greatest of all time. He carried the company for a long time, and like I said, I'm going to do a separate video on it, but I am going to miss his presence in the WWE, because him coming out kind of actually saved the PLE from being a complete dumpster fire. But anyway, so here are the reasons why I was not overly happy about the the PLE. So obviously, one big thing that kind of gets me as a wrestling fan is I like to be surprised. I really like to be surprised, because that's what really makes wrestling big time for me, is whenever I don't see something coming. And with pretty much every single thing that happened on this PLE, you can kind of see it coming. It was a little rough. There weren't any surprises, like literally no surprises at all. And the other big thing is that there was no big returns outside of John Cena showing up and announcing his retirement. That was the biggest thing. There was nothing that furthered storylines, at least not that I could tell. Especially with the ladder match. So the ladder match had so much potential. Like, You could have had CM Punk coming back and screwing over Drew in the ladder match. You could have had the Wyatt Six or something do something with Chad Gable. You had Logan Paul with his feud with LA Knight. There were several feuds that you could have caused at least a little bit of interference, and it would have made for a better PLE, but my God, nothing happened. Nothing happened. There were some good spots. Like, there was some pretty good matches, but no interference. Nothing to help storylines. Nothing to help further storylines. No returns. No debuts. No nothing. It was just cut and dry. I think that's my biggest issue with it, is just that it was just appealing. And I will say, if I end up having to pay for it like the old school style pay-per-view, I wouldn't have been happy. I wouldn't have been happy with the result. And I outside of that, though, the matches were good. The matches were solid. I didn't like some of the endings. I'm really not the biggest fan of the fact that we went from having an almost year-long Mr. Money in the Bank that really solidified Damian Priest as like a main event guy. I still don't necessarily believe that he's a main event type guy, but it was looking a lot better for him, and the briefcase definitely did help elevate that. Now, I feel like it was just such a waste, because now we're not going to have any surprise throughout the year of wondering who is going to be cashing in. Like, when is Drew going to be cashing in? Or when is Jay going to be cashing in? Or not Logan Paul, LA Knight. But yeah, so there's no mystique about it. There's no mystique. It's already happened. It's done. Now, granted, I will say this. I do need to just sit there and let Triple H cook. Let him cook up some good storylines. We already know that WWE tends to do that. They tend to make these long-term stories happen, and they end up paying off really well. It did help with the feud with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre, but like I said, I didn't really like the fact that it kind of screwed him out of the title, because, I mean, Drew is absolutely phenomenal. I also have issues with the fact that, like, everybody wants to see CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. I'm not the biggest CM Punk fan. I know I'm definitely in the minority in saying that, but at the end of the day, the problem that I have with it is just that, like, the last time this dude was in a ring, he got injured. So if he gets into the ring with Drew, I am prepared to be let down, because I think that he's going to get injured again. I really hope he doesn't, because it's good cinema. It's great for pro wrestling, but he's not contributing a whole lot, So it's just a little aggravating. But he's still beloved by a lot of fans and everything, and this feud is the biggest feud in all of wrestling. I will admit that. So with that being said, I want to know what you guys' thoughts are. Let me know what you guys thought about Money in the Bank. Let me know if you guys thought it was not as great as I did. I gave it like a 5 out of 10, maybe a 6 out of 10, but mostly a 5 out of 10, because there wasn't very many surprises, wasn't very much interference. It was just very clunky. It felt weird. I just wasn't the hugest fan of it, but I'm going to keep an open mind as we approach closer to SummerSlam and everything. And then, like I said, I'll be posting up videos about John Cena and the new bloodline and what all that entails and stuff. So be on the lookout for those. But with that being said, please make sure that if you enjoyed this video, you drop a like, comment down below, let me know what your thoughts were on the PLE and everything. And then hit that subscribe button, hit that bell for post notifications so you know anytime I post a video, because I try to post these pretty frequently. But with all that being said, we'll catch you all in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.